All right. Well, I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Rebound series. I'm your host, Trip Odenheimer, and I just happened to find this shirt laying around as I was logging on here for this episode with a legend from Duke, Ricky Price, two-time regular season ACC champions. He was an All-ACC performer, had a decade-long pro career, does public speaking, works with you, does some amazing stuff right now. So, sir, welcome to the Shadows.
Hey, it's a pleasure being here. Looking forward to talking hoops.
Yeah, absolutely. And first thing, speaking of hoops, that I got to ask you is a couple of rapid fire questions. I've sprinkled some college basketball related questions in here. The best player you ever played against during your college career?
That's a good question. Two pop out immediately. I would say Tim Duncan and Ray Allen. Both were
Oh, yeah.
sensational. Obviously, Tim Duncan was at Wake Forest. I saw him for 3 years, and he was incredible. Just about all three that I played against him. Obviously, one of the top players in NBA history, maybe the best power forward of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
And he was nothing short of sensational at Wake Forest with his prowess around the basket, blocking shots, altering shots, just bringing that winning culture, while having that very solemn demeanor and hell of a player. The second one, Ray Allen, that I mentioned, played against him once in the Grade A Classic,
Hmm.
UConn versus Duke, my freshman year, and they beat us actually in that game. He was sensational, 26 points. I probably got 20 of those. Um, and he was just masterful coming off screens, masterful at creating angles for himself, and then he had that sweet stroke as well that you saw for his 15-year pro career, and he was just sensational to watch and to play against.
I remember that grade eight game. I remember that one. And then the Duncan kind of came out of nowhere at Wake Forest, too. Like he was not a huge recruit coming there. He's more of a project player, but what did he evolve into? Goodness.
Yeah, I mean, with the size and length, and then the the skill set, and then the willing to improve, especially on defense. He was
Hmm.
tough, to get around as he guarded the basket. He was just tough to score on, and hell of a player, man, hell of a career. Kudos to him.
Yeah. Now, this next question, the easy answer is probably to Smith Center, but least favorite crowd to play in front of during your time at Duke?
It was not the Smith Center. That's more of a wine and cheese crowd.
Yeah, yeah.
They had a really bouncy floor that I liked. If you could jump a little bit, their floor was definitely geared for you.
High quality
Um,
court. Okay.
no question. The biggest thing was probably, I would say Clemson. Clemson was really, really tough to play. It was just a tough road trip. It was one of the worst trips really in the ACC. Nothing was there, no restaurants. It was just a tough environment to play in, and those people were just, on top of you. They were screaming profanities. So I would say one would be Clemson, one A would be Cole Fieldhouse in Maryland.
Yeah, I was
Um,
thinking Maryland.
yeah, that was a raucous crowd. I remember I hit a game-winning shot in that arena, and they were throwing quarters and apples and everything else you could see. So it was crazy.
I believe it's JJ Redick who has very fond things to say about the Maryland fans there. Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of it is warranted. I mean, players are gonna, if asked questions, we're gonna give the true response. But
Mhm.
some of these fans are, nothing short of ridiculous, and the Maryland fans and the Clemson fans were just that.
Yeah, I went to the ACC tournament one year and I was sitting in the Clemson section and it got so bad. I was there with my mom and
Hmm.
we're uh, so happened North Carolina and Clemson had to play the next day. We had to go up to the top and watch the conclusion of the Clemson Carolina game from the top of the concession stand area because it was that obnoxious of, and I get it, Tar Heel fans have them. We were talking about before, every fan base has them, but enjoy the game.
Hmm.
Have
Hmm.
fun. Start throwing batteries and stuff. That's too much.
Right.
Um, Mount Rushmore of Duke players.
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. Ooh, so many good guys, and ideology says, do you want to count the one and dones? I guess you have to. They wore Duke
Yeah.
uniforms. But for me, I would say, Grant Hill, uh, Jay Jay Williams. I know him as
Mm.
Jason Williams. That was his name previous before he changed it. I think those are the two most talented players to ever come through Duke. And then, maybe you go with Leitner at your third spot. And then it's probably going to have to be one of those one and dones after that. Either, Jason Tatum or Kyrie Irving or Zion Williamson, just based on talent perspective.
Mhm.
So I know that's more than a Mount Rushmore, but to me, those are your, top five, talent wise, top five guys to ever put on a Duke uniform.
Okay. That's a good Mount Rushmore right there. Start that lineup against anybody. Uh, what's a good book recommendation you have for listeners out there?
Um, I would say my book, which I'm trying to finish now. It's not out yet, but we're finishing the touches on it now, and we're hoping to release it sometime during the NCAA tournament. And so,
Hmm.
Celebrate Your Wins will be hitting the shelves soon. I would say that would be something. It's not quite out yet, but be on the lookout. Um, Coach K wrote a book called The Gold Standard that I
Yes.
really, really liked, chronicling the 2008 Olympics and the journey of building that team, the journey of coaching that team, and the journey of getting that team back to prominence, world prominence as a basketball power. I think it's riveting. I think it's a great book. I think it's a great read. The Gold Standard, written by none other than Coach K.
He's got phenomenal books. When I was deployed, I read Leading with the Heart,
Mm,
and I've read Dean Smith, John Wooden. I've read all sorts of coaching books. I'm a nerd for that kind of stuff. Leading with the Heart was one of the best. It gave me like a newfound respect as a Tar Heel,
hmm
for the Duke program. So yeah, we'll definitely have all of those books uh, listed, especially like yours comes out around the time this episode's dropping is going to be March Madness. So if you got a link or anything, let us know, and we'll have it in the description of this episode as well. And
Absolutely.
final question: you can have dinner for three historical figures that are no longer with us. Who do you break bread with?
No longer with us. Wow, that's a good question as well. I would say, Kobe Bryant is one of
Mm.
them. He's one of my all-time favorites. Obviously, I'm an LA guy, huge Laker fan, and he is one of my favorite players of all time. Obviously, we lost him in a tragic accident a couple years back, and I still think about him and the imprint that he had on the game of basketball.
Yeah.
And I would love to sit down with him and pick his brain over an hour and a half dinner. Who else? Maybe Michael Jackson.
Mm.
Michael Jackson, obviously huge fan, huge pop star, but known for his incredible work ethic and his approach to greatness. Obviously he was a little quirky in some of the things that he did, but he's another guy I like to pick, his brain a little bit about and how he did things. And then maybe somebody like Martin Luther King. Obviously Black History Month is huge right now, and he was one of the innovators, of our culture and putting us in a position, to have equal opportunities and to sit down with him and pick his brain on his thought processes and how he did things. I think would be of interest to me as well. So I think those three. What do you think? Pretty good three.
Oh, that's a solid three. As I say, Martin Luther King to me is the epitome of someone with personal power, who just people hang on to his words and followed him just because of his beliefs and the way he conducted himself. So I think that's a great group right there. Good leader group with the Kobe
Yeah.
and the Martin Luther King. So question for you now. Tell
Mhm.
our listeners about like your upbringings. You mentioned uh, being out in California. So what was young Ricky Price like? When did you know you were gifted at basketball, and what were some of your aspirations growing up?
Well, at the age of 5, my dad put a basketball in my hands, and I just fell in love with the game. And I had to hold it, I had to touch it, I had to play it, I had to talk about it. It was oozing through my pores. And at that point, I knew I had love for the game, but who knew that I was going to be 6'6" and athletic?
Yeah.
My dad was 6'5", my mom was 5'6". My dad played basketball. He tried to make the team at UCLA during the glory years. He was unsuccessful, but he did, play with the guys, and he had an interest in love for the game. And he was a decent basketball player, fairly athletic, but he passed some of those genes on to me, and I was able to flourish. He was there every step of the way, teaching me the game and taking me to my AAU practices and my games and teaching me the subtle nuances. And I began to grow and flourish as a basketball player. And basketball has taken me to places that I would have never dreamed of. Playing at Duke, playing professional for 9 years. Training kids, which is what I'm doing now. But all that started with the foundation growing up in the mean streets of Los Angeles, California. I grew up in the '80s when gang violence was at its peak,
Mm.
and Biggie Smalls has a quote. Either you sling crack rock or you had a wicked jump shot, and that rang true for the kids that I grew up with. In California, either you got into the streets and were, gang violence and drugs and stuff like that, or you played a sport and you kind of got out that way. But I was fortunate that I was able to grow up on the straight and narrow. My parents were on me, and it was airtight discipline, and they wanted me to be successful. And basketball was my vehicle, and that tutelage and that foundation, really paved the way for some of the successes that I had.
I always like to ask about like leaders that people have had in their lives, and parents sometimes are the best examples we got. What was something that your parents did? You mentioned that discipline piece that subconsciously you catch yourself doing today as an adult.
I think the biggest thing was, it's a good question. I think it's being accountable. You
Mm,
know,
that's
a
big.
lot of times, people just want to blame and point the finger at everybody else, and you can't do that. I was the only child, and so when things happen in the house, it was no one else to blame. It was me. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't well, such and such, Lil Johnny did it, or my sister did it. Nah, it was you. You're the only one here. And so, being accountable was something that had to learn at an early part in my life. And I think my mom was a stickler about that, and my dad, also championed that, and that kind of stuck with me. Being accountable for what you do and how you do it, and always make good impressions. Always put your best foot forward. Always do your very best. These are some of the staples that I can remember being taught, as a young child.
Yeah. Next question, and that accountability is big. That's like my stickler for people that lack that. But it's a different time when you were going through high school in terms of there was no social media like there is now. There's no YouTube. How was the recruiting process for you back in, what was it, 93, 94 time
Mm-hmm.
frame? I'm assuming it was VHSs being sent out, and uh so how
I
was
mean,
that
are,
process?
are you really dating me with VHSs? Really?
No, I'm a VHS guy. But how was that in terms of like getting on Duke's radar? And I mean, you even mentioned like North Carolina had been recruiting you too. So how was that from California all the way to the East Coast, getting that name out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, I was one of the top players in California, and first and foremost, recruiting has been so good, in the past that if you can play, they're going to find you. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying? Trajan Langdon was also in my class from Alaska. You know what I'm saying? And they went and got him. Carlos Boozer later on. We've had European players, and so if you can play, they will find you. But I was fortunate enough to be on the AU circuit on some really good teams. Obviously, California has always been a powerhouse of sending great players to college, and I was able to benefit from that. The recruiting process was really good for me. It started kind of early. I think I got my first letter in the ninth grade. I remember I was in actually the eighth grade going to the ninth grade. I was in a summer school transition program to get ready for the ninth grade, and a knock came on the door, and I had a letter from Arizona. And Lute Olson wrote me my first letter, and then that same day, another one came in from Long Beach State. And
Okay.
so my first two letters came on the same day, and then from then on out, I was just being steadily recruited, for my talent. And for me, the final five for me was Duke, Kansas, Arkansas, Arizona, and Cal. In all five schools, I thought I could have flourished at and done well. But there was something about Duke, the Duke visit, Coach K, playing in the ACC, uh, going to a top five school academically in the nation, that just kind of like had its claws kind of wrapped around me. And for me, it was a pretty easy decision.
Do you remember the first time you spoke with Coach K?
Yes. Yes. They actually got into my recruitment late. They didn't
Mm.
start recruiting me until my junior year. And part of it is because I think Duke and a lot of universities do a great job of vetting you. They want to do their homework on you as well. What type of kid are you? What type of grades do you get? Socially, what type of kid are you? Are you coachable? Your parents, your background. Have you been in trouble off the court? They're vetting you and they're looking into all these things to decide if they want to offer you a scholarship. And then obviously, can you play? I mean, they're not going to recruit you if you're not a phenomenal basketball player and you can help the program win. And so, I think after doing his vetting process and see me grow and flourish as a basketball player, Coach K got on the phone with me and my family and begin the recruiting process. And once he got in, he was in full bore. And what's special about that is that I didn't really get recruited by any of the assistants. Coach K recruited me specifically.
Oh,
He
wow.
was the main guy on it, and maybe it was because they were late in the game, or maybe he just we had a liking to each other. But I didn't really talk to Tommy Amaker or Mike Bray that much in the recruitment process. It was mainly Coach K, recruiting me to come to Duke, which I appreciated.
Was Billis on the staff then?
Billis was not. So we had
Gaudet?
Pete Gaudet, Tommy Amaker, and Mike Bray were my
Yep.
assistants. And then later, we got Quinn Snyder and Johnny Dawkins and Dave Henderson, and that crew came in. Tim O'Toole, but that was my crew when I was at Duke in the mid-90s.
Speaking of Coach K, what is something that he said to you that still sticks with you to this day? If you had to say one thing.
Oh, so many things. I mean, he's been so instrumental in my life, developing me as a basketball player. And I think it's the confidence that he gives you, as a basketball player. I remember, after missing a game-winning shot at Carolina,
Thank you.
1996, shot fake, one dribble pull up, and it was straight as an arrow, but it was short. And I led the team in scoring that day, and unfortunately we lost, on a game-winning miss by me. And shortly thereafter, he pulled me aside and he said that, Ricky, we wanted you to take that shot,
Mm.
And if you get an opportunity, I want you to take it again. And I can't make this stuff up. I mentioned it earlier, 2 weeks later at Maryland,
Yeah.
I had another opportunity to do it. Same situation. This time I'm on the left wing, get the ball, spot up for three, knock it down, all net, and we beat Maryland at the buzzer. But it was that confidence that he gave me 2 weeks earlier in the miss against Carolina that I think helped me make the shot against Maryland. And these are some of the nuggets that Coach K gives you,
Yeah.
confidence-wise as a player to make you feel like you can do it.
Speaking of, I love Coach K. I do, except for like 32 times a year for 40 minutes. But I really do in terms of coaching. I think it's hard pressed to find anybody better than what he did. His track record proves it. Sorry, Carolina fans, but what is something that you subconsciously do, especially even like working with youth, that you're like, this has Coach K's fingerprints all over it?
No question. I do it all the time. It's like I'm echoing commands. And that's one thing that he would say. He would always say echo commands. When I coached AAU for 5 years, I coached sixth, seventh, and eighth grade
Yep.
repeatedly. We had some really good teams here in North Carolina. And one of the things he would say was echo commands, meaning that when a play was called out, it can't just be one person calling the play out. The whole team needs to echo commands. So if we're in play one, everyone needs to say one. You know what I'm saying? So we're on the same page, together. He always talked about calling for the ball. Calling for the ball. When you're open, you want to call for the ball and have your hands ready. He always talked about being ready to shoot. A lot of players get ready to shoot after they catch the basketball. Well, that's totally the wrong way to do it. You got to start getting ready to shoot before the ball is swung to you.
Mm.
And that means your feet being set, shoulder square, your hands ready, and being ready to shoot. So now when you catch, you can just get straight into your shot and you're good to go. He talked about, talking on defense, all these things, I use in my everyday, training sessions. And when I say those words, sometimes the way that he would say them, I'm like, where have I heard this? Where have I heard this from?
Yep.
And it's from the great Coach K. And so, one thing that's good for, playing for a guy like that is to learn and get the knowledge of a true basketball savant, which is what he is. And it'd be criminal if I didn't, share some of the things that I learned from him with the youth that I'm training today.
I like to hear those little like isms that teams did. Like, for me as a Tar Heel, you always heard about Dean Smith making you point to the person that gave you the assist when you're
Mm-hmm.
running down court and giving them the credit. So I like to hear that. And what you said about getting your body ready before to shoot before you even get the ball, that's something that's missing with a lot of basketball right now. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of it. So that proves why the track record was what it was during his time at Duke. So you get there, the 95 season, like things are going good. January 4th, y'all number 7 in the country. And then all of a sudden that season does not end like a typical Duke season. Now, keep in mind the year before 94, Duke nearly won the national title down in Charlotte and lost
Mm-hmm.
to just a stacked Corliss Williamson Arkansas
Mm-hmm.
team. But you get there for the first couple of months. Like, what was the transition like from you from high school ball to playing at a dominant level like Duke and in the ACC?
Well, it's a huge transition. We're talking about the biggest jump to me is from, eighth grade to high school. Another big jump is from high school to college. Then another big jump is from, college to pro. And it's truly a huge jump. That jump from high school to college is unbelievable. The speed of the game. And, because you're so good and you're the best player in California, you think that you can just dominate.
Yeah.
Well, everybody else on your team was Mr. Basketball in their state as well. And so we get to Duke and we have 9 McDonald's All-Americans.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And there's so many guys who are as good or better than me. And so you had to bring it each and every day. You couldn't take days off. You couldn't take possessions off. Obviously, the academic regimen at Duke is like no other. Top 5 school in the nation academically.
Yep.
So now you got to ingratiate yourself with being a student athlete. The social aspect. But that season was just very difficult, just because it wasn't a typical Duke season. You had seen Duke flourish over the years, get to Final Fours, get to back-to-back national championship just a couple years earlier, and then we come in with the 13 and 18 season, and it all stemmed. We were 8-2, and then Coach K, could not finish the season, because of exhaustion in his back, and the wheels just fell off immediately. And that lets you know how big and how important coaching is, because without him keeping everything together, it just slowly but surely crumbled. And we weren't a really, really bad team. We lost a lot of games
Very close games.
by 4, 5, 3 points. We never got blown out. And you could just tell those losses were just hit and misses and different things that, coach probably could have told us to do that, maybe would have got us over the hump. And without him, it just wasn't the typical Duke season.
Yeah, you mentioned it, from January 4th until February 9th, they didn't win an ACC game. So I can imagine being a freshman on campus, especially passionate alumni. They had been to the Final Four. I don't think I'm forgetting a year here, but it was 86, 88, 89, 90, national
Mm-hmm.
title 91, 92, and then the
Mm-hmm.
94 Final Four. So
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine what it was like, the stress, pressure, anxiety. Were you feeling any of that on campus during that time?
No, I didn't really feel it, but you can just tell that something was different.
Yeah.
And, Duke is a winning program, always has been. And without, winning, something is definitely empty and not complete. And so, it was a year to forget, but it was a year to remember, because there were so many things that we could take from that year and say, okay, we got to change this and do better the following year, which we did. We turned 13, 18 to 18 and 13,
Yeah.
and we made the tournament the following year. It's still a far cry from what a Duke traditional team should look like, but it was far better than what it was the year before.
Yeah, progression nonetheless. And then that 95 season, the one game I want to talk about is a lot of people say it's one of the best ACC games and one of the best in that rivalry. What do you remember about that 100 to 102 game in Durham against North Carolina?
One of my favorite games of all time, and if not, one of the best North Carolina Duke games of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember the energy in that building. And every game is like that. I went to the game a couple weeks back in Cameron where we were able to play against North Carolina. And, just the energy from that game is just so electric. And so I remember after Jeff Capel hit the half court shot,
Yeah.
I remember being in the huddle and Pete Gaudet talking to us, and he's, maybe 2 feet away from us, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs to instruct us on what to do, and I could not hear him. It was so loud in the arena that I could not hear him 2 feet away from me. And it was electric in that building. Jerry Stackhouse with the reverse dunk.
Oh, that's amazing.
Rasheed Wallace with the perfect game. They got me in Sports Illustrated, getting dunked on by him. One comes off the rim and he just goes and just bangs it down. And I'm hanging on his arm. Cherokee Parks and Eric Meeks are also there. And he was just unbelievable. And so, Dean Smith coaching, it was an awesome environment. And it was a tough pill to swallow, not winning that game. If you wanted to win that game, you had to win it in regulation. And unfortunately, we couldn't get it done.
Yeah, that incredible game. They still show clips of the
Mhm.
half court shot, the Stackhouse dunk over. It seems like every year when they're playing Duke Carolina highlights. But you mentioned 96, y'all flipped the script. You go 18 and 13. You get in the tournament. Like you said, it's still, even me as a fan, it still didn't feel like Duke all the way. Eastern Michigan, I think it was, with Boykin. Y'all played in the tournament. And what do you remember about that experience, your first dose of the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, that team was riddled with injury. We lost Trajan that year. We didn't have him. And then we lost Chris Collins late, who was our leading scorer, to a foot injury, and he was hobbled. And so we were just a wounded team in terms of injury that year, which was unfortunate. But we did make some strides. We had I think a 6-game winning streak in the ACC, and for me as a sophomore, that was my best year at Duke. I was averaged 14 points. I shot really high from the field, 39% from three. I was an All-ACC selection, and I was really becoming the player that I thought I could, become as a sophomore. And so I was very grateful for that opportunity. We just didn't have the success as a team that I would have liked to see. But again, it was much, much, much better than the year before. And then we spring into our junior year, and then we're 26-7 or 8 or whatever that is. And then my senior year, we're 32-4, something crazy like that. And so you saw the progression of us getting better over time and getting us back to the traditional Duke teams that you're used to seeing. But for me personally, sophomore year was my best year and a year to remember.
What's the one game that stands out most from that sophomore year?
So many games. I keep talking about the game-winning shot at Maryland. I got my career high against Virginia that year. I played well against Carolina in both games. Being All-ACC, I had a couple really electrifying dunks that year as well. I was becoming, a player to watch as a sophomore, and I was very, very gracious for that.
Kind of a very random question. The first 2 years, was it the first 2 years or just 95 when y'all had like the blue kind of going down the front of the jersey?
Yeah, that was his freshman year, and we got rid of that real quick.
Y'all like
Nike
just
obviously,
not feeling it.
yeah, Nike obviously sponsors Duke, and sometimes they try to freak the uniforms a little bit, and they thought that would be cool. But looking back at it, horrible season, horrible uniforms, and so I think next year we went back to the traditional V. And now, they got like 4 or 5 different jerseys. You see the black. We had the black. We introduced the black in '97 actually, and we kept that. So we got black, white, blue. Now they have gray. Now they have dark blue. There's so many things that they're doing now. With the jerseys with Nike that it's kind of cool.
What did you think of the one a couple years back when Duke and Carolina played, and it was like the big NC and then the big Duke D on the front of theirs? Did you like that?
I love it. You want to freak that. Kids that are coming up now, recruits, they want to see that. Do you know Oregon football? Do you know they wear a different jersey, uniform every single game?
Helmet.
Every single game. They wear something new every single game. I love it. Now, I know it's Phil Knight. I know it's Nike. I know it's Nike Town, but I think that's really cool. You're still going to stay with the green and all that, But I mean, to freak it and have a new uniform every game, I mean, that's kind of cool. I don't know if they can pull that off in basketball, but I like when they change it up a little
It's marketing too. You sell those jerseys and
bit. Mm-hmm.
yeah. To kind of hit the pause before 97, 98, how important was it for you to help out with Duke basketball camp?
I think it was good. I think it was good. I mean, if you want to be a coach, you got to start on the grassroots.
Mm-hmm.
Training and coaching, you got to be on the ground, on the skill development side, and that's working camps. That's getting kids in stations and putting them through drills. That's the organization, that's your delivery on how you talk to kids and how you get your point across. I think if you want to be a coach or trainer, grassroots coaching, which is working basketball camps, is an absolute must. And I think that's where I got, a lot of the stuff that I do, drills, words that I use, and being organized is from. I run a basketball camp every summer as well, and a lot of the stuff that we do, I learned from Duke basketball camp.
I was going to ask, do you think that planted the seeds to what you're currently doing?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And also, you mentioned the student athlete piece, and that's something that doesn't get talked about too much when people talk about their careers and stuff. But you hinted at kind of the stress of, the academics. What was like a typical day like for you during basketball season, balancing, and what did you do to balance the student athlete piece?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, listen, I'm not going to front. You go to Duke to play basketball, and that's the number one priority. But at Duke, it's a little bit different because academics are so high on the food chain, as it should be.
Yeah.
And so I was able to graduate with a major in sociology, minor in history, but it was tough. It was tough. I mean, Duke is not an easy school. I remember my first year, my freshman year, my first semester, I had 3 A's and a B. My mom was like, "Oh my God, you're a genius. How are you able to do this?" I'm like, "I don't know, Mom, but I guess I'm getting better academically." And then the next year, I didn't have any A's or any B's. It got real. And it got real. And it's just a progression of the workload and the stuff that you were being taught. And then, the papers and everything else, you got to balance that with practice and games and travel. Very, very demanding. And so, it was tough to do, but, it's part of the deal of being a student athlete.
Yeah, that first year with those 101 classes is nice, but you start hitting those
Yeah, introductory level classes and just our review.
intro
And
to, or they're great.
right. So it got real after that.
What's your opinion on the current like NILs and transfer portals that they have out there?
Ah, man, we could have a whole conversation on that. The biggest thought that I have on NIL is where the hell was that when I was coming up?
Yeah.
Why didn't we have that in the mid
Now it's
90s?
Dunkin' Donuts and all this other
Oh my
stuff.
God. I mean, winning the McDonald's slam dunk championship, being a high flyer like myself coming out of California, I probably would have had all type of
Oh yeah.
offers on the NIL side. But I'm glad that the student athlete now is starting to get more of what he deserves. At the end of the day, the NCAA is making so much money off of these kids,
Mm-hmm.
the tournaments, the jerseys, the jersey sales, and everything else that they're promoting. They put directly into their pocket. And education is cool, but it's not a fair trade-off. It needs to be education and then some. And finally, we're starting to get that then some. But I think that the NIL is definitely going to end up being a problem because it's going to be, about the have and the have-nots. It's going to be about schools that, have the resources to offer the NIL packages versus schools that don't.
Yeah.
And, you saw that with the kid in Florida, the quarterback from Florida who, was promised $13 million on NIL. And then all of a sudden that was just talk and that deal, wasn't gonna happen. And he was like, "Oh, okay, it's not gonna happen, then I'm out." And so now you're making promises that you can't keep. I mean, this could go into some murky waters
Mm-hmm.
if it continues to spiral out of control. So there has to be a cap on how this is worked out. But this is a fairly new concept, and I think the NCAA is trying to figure it all out. But like I said, this could be a little murky, after a while. And the transfer portal is just nothing short of ridiculous. When I
Can't
look
grow.
when I looked last time, there was 2,000 people in the transfer portal on the basketball side, but there's only 200 or so Division I colleges, and there's even less spots than that. And so you go into the portal thinking you're going to go to, greener pastures, and then all of a sudden you don't have anything. And so it's just a great way for teams to fill out their rosters. But I think it benefits the teams more than it benefits the players. And then they're starting to see that with how many people are in the portal and how many opportunities are really not there.
Yeah, I was telling my daughter, because my daughter is really big into college basketball now, and I was telling her how, like, back in the day, you would get like a Shammond Williams at North Carolina, and
Mm-hmm.
he walks in and he's getting maybe 6 minutes his freshman year, with the understanding that by the time you're a senior, you're going to be starting every game. There's this progression, but now it's like if they come in and they're not getting playing time right off the bat, well, I'm out. I'm going to Texas A&M, or I'm going
Yeah.
to somewhere
We
else.
we are in the world of instant gratification.
100%.
The microwave way of life. I want it now. And if you can't give it to me now, I don't want it. I don't
Yeah.
want to learn. I don't want to wait. I don't want to get better. I want it now. And it's a really, really sad way to look at it. But that's where we are. That's where we are in the college landscape.
Yeah. And, getting back to kind of finishing up your career at Duke, 97, y'all were 24-9, ranked the entire year. And then you'll get the ACC tournament, get knocked out by NC State, which is a huge upset. Then you go to the tournament. I remember the Providence game.
Mm-hmm.
Providence went on a crazy run during that tournament to the Elite Eight. But then this is the cool part, I think, about your story. It's different from a lot of four-year players at Duke. You got there in this really weird time where they just came off the Final Four. It was Coach K, one of his worst seasons he's had there since the early 80s seasons. I mean, I would say not even Coach K. I mean, he was out for that year. Just a really weird year for Duke basketball. And then, like you said, y'all progressively got better and better. Y'all were really laying the foundation for what was to come for Duke, which is perhaps maybe the best team never to win a title, that 99 Duke team. Just absolutely stacked. And then obviously the Dunleavy, Williams teams that followed and won some national titles, or won a national title. I believe it was what, 01 that they beat Maryland in the Final Four, and I think beat Arizona. But that to go from 13-18 to 32-4, what does that mean? And y'all got really close to the Final Four. Amazing classic against Kentucky. What did it mean for you to wrap your career up and look back at the body of work and say, this is where we started and this is where I'm leaving this program?
It was great. It was great. Obviously, this was the Duke teams that you would think would be Duke teams my junior and senior year.
Mm-hmm.
25 plus wins, deep tournament runs. But the landscape was changing, was starting to change, not only for college basketball, but for the pros, because now we were also getting ready to enter the one and done.
One and done's is right around that time.
Right around the corner. And so, people are jockeying for position, and basketball was changing, ever so much. But to be a part of the Duke culture, to be part of the program, people ask me all the time, do I regret, going to Duke? And it's unequivocally no. If I had to choose again, I probably would do the same thing. And I learned so much from Coach. I learned so much about being, in that community. I learned so much, about growing up as a man, from getting away and going 3,000 miles away from home. And I really, really, thank the good people, for helping me, become, who I am today. And I think those 4 years at Duke, really shaped that.
How big was graduation for you?
Graduation was huge. Obviously, I ran into some academic trouble as a senior, and so it kind of felt like I might not, graduate. But I hunkered down. I took the necessary classes. I went to the necessary summer school situation classes that I had to go to, and I was able to finish. And like I said, I finished with a major in sociology, minor in history, and my mom was there to cheer me on. And nothing could be better than that, than seeing her smile and watch her baby, her only child, graduate from prestigious Duke University. And so I got my diploma, my degree sitting right here on my wall, so I can look at it every day.
You got one of the framed Duke jerseys in there too. I know you have to have one of those somewhere around the house.
No question. You can't see it in here, but it's right over here to the left.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's there.
All right. Yeah, that's a good touch there. And then you went pro, spent some time with the Pistons, went overseas. Where all in Europe? I saw Europe.
Yeah. Passport full of stamps. 2 years in France, Slovenia, Amsterdam, Finland, China, Philippines, Venezuela, you name it. And so basketball has afforded me an incredible opportunity to see some of these places. And had I not been hooping, I probably would have never seen these places. So, I'm very grateful for what the game has given me from a travel perspective, from a monetary perspective, and everything else. It's been a hell of a ride.
You mentioned it's opened some doors for you. Talk to us now as we, kind of wrap this up about all the amazing stuff you're doing now. You mentioned a book. We've mentioned working with the youth, but you're out there doing public speaking and all kinds of other stuff. So tell our listeners what you're doing and where can they find out everything about you.
Well, 11 years, I started a company called Game Ready Skills and Development Training, and essentially, I'm a basketball trainer. I train kids on skill development training, speed agility training. We do camps, we do clinics, we do corporate team building, and from that, it has kind of spun into other things like motivational speaking. And so, for me, I found myself, teaching and talking to people about the game. And, I found that my calling really is to teach, not a CMS teacher, in the school, but to teach basketball. Mm-hmm. And I'm not an expert in too many things, but I do know everything just about the game. And so, for me, giving these kids opportunities to help improve their game and reach their goals and aspirations through basketball is very gratifying. All these kids here in North Carolina, which is the #1 sport, they play basketball. They want to be basketball players. They want to go to Duke. They want to go to North Carolina. Now, a lot of them will probably never achieve that goal, but it's the journey and the discipline and the preparation that their parents are interested in. And I help in that regard. And then, there'll be a couple guys that slip through the cracks and, they'll make, and get to college, on the scholarship and all as well. And so, for me, it's a dream come true. I get to wear shorts and a t-shirt every day, to work. I'm working, 10 to 12 hours a week, training, and then I'm on the road traveling, speaking. And so I'm getting to live, kind of the good life, a good dream, if you will, teaching and talking about basketball.
And where can they find you at social media or website wise?
So our website is GameReadyCOT.com. Go there. Everything is there. Instagram handles at GameReadyCOT. And so everything is there. Just a website of all the information and the services that we offer, more information about me and how you can get signed up and register. We have a big summer camp coming up. I'm going to announce that at the end of the month. We do that in June. This year to be June 12th. And so basketball is life. Life is basketball. Let's keep it rolling.
100%. And celebrate your wins. As soon as you got something on that, let us know. We're going to push that out on all social media. I definitely want to check that out as well. And yeah, you're talking about basketball in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I was just telling someone the other night, I was like, y'all don't understand. When I was in grade school and middle school, they would roll TVs in on a Friday morning, mm-hmm. and we turn on the ACC tournament.
No question.
And the amount of school absences during the NCAA tournament, I imagine, because I was one of them. I had a doctor's appointment Thursday and Friday of that first round of 64 every single year. What final comments do you have for our listeners out there?
I think if you're watching this, you can see that I discovered a passion, and the passion is basketball. And, playing basketball is one thing, but teaching and working in basketball is something totally different. And so I guess what I would say is to your listeners and viewers is you need to find out what your passion is and then go for it. And then hopefully that passion can be monetized, and now you can have a job and you can have a career in something that you love to do. And, that has been me for the past, 11 to 15 years, working in basketball and doing something that I love each and every day.
I'm going to flip the questions that I typically ask. I'm going to ask you this one last question.
Okay.
Your name is in the record books at Duke, which is the coolest thing just to think about, but you're an All-ACC performer. You won regular season titles when you were at Duke. When someone looks your name up 100 years from now and says Ricky Price, what do you want them to say about you?
Outgoing, fun to be around, fun to watch, hell of a basketball player, hell of a person, and hell of a friend. And he always did it, his way, and he was that guy. And so if I can be mentioned, in those type of regards, I think I would have had a pretty good career, and I think that'd be really, really good.
Yeah, well, I personally appreciate you, being kind enough to take time to be here on our season 3 of Rebound series. I have that's 2 Duke personalities that I have on this season. So, if a couple of my Tar Heels fall through, I'm not real happy about this. But nonetheless, I appreciate you taking time to do this, folks. Make sure y'all stay tuned next week for another episode of the Rebound series.